Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Patient Convert podcast. Today, we are talking about lead generation strategies for medical spas and cash based aesthetics practices. Really excited about this because this is growing by leaps and bounds. This industry, it's obviously been kind of on the forefront of private equity investing and them being very interested. It's probably one of the few that they are heavily investing in right now at a rapid pace because the margins are so good in a lot of the med spa space. And it's such a growing industry in terms of the consumer facing side. And it's also one of the best industries to market from a marketer perspective like myself, because it is the tried and true D2C direct to consumer type marketing model that you don't see in a lot of traditional healthcare, like insurance based or referral dominated spaces. So, with that comes a lot of the more tried and true marketing efforts that you would see in like e commerce and real estate and a lot of other places that have been doing direct to consumer marketing forever. And we've been doing it for a long time. It's probably our second largest, kind of call it subspecialty of focus at the agency. So we've been doing med spa and aesthetics cash-based marketing for well over a decade now, have 30, 40 plus years of combined experience across all of the different major departments. And so we've seen literally hundreds of thousands of leads, millions and millions of dollars generated through these things that we're going to talk about today. Probably first and foremost is your website. Your website is the primary digital billboard. It is the primary place in terms of lead generation and improving and growing your lead generation efforts. It really does start and end with how your website is structured, the user experience, the flows on it, the self-patient appointment booking, the different things that you provide patients. Because again, at the end of the day, it's price competitive, but it's also kind of luxury brand feel. It's how some organizations can charge premium prices because they present themselves with a much higher brand experience, a much higher in-person experience, and as a result, people are willing to drive further, pay more for that type of experience. And the way that experience starts digitally is on your website. It begins and ends there. And so making sure that you have a very high end, from an investment standpoint, website that is structurally sound and engaging, but also is optimized for lead conversion and lead generation. So it educates patients, it presents a luxury brand feel that makes them want to pay a premium, and it makes it really easy and seamless to be able to check out, so to speak. So that's book an appointment, purchase something potentially from an e-commerce standpoint, which we'll talk about in just a second. But that is huge. I mean, the med spas that are crushing it, they typically have a very solid foundation, and that foundation is in the infrastructure they put together for their website and how they manage that website on an ongoing basis, and the content on the website, which is kind of stepping into the next piece. And that's both having content that's engagement for video, those types of things, demos, all that type of stuff. Before and afters are one of the biggest things in the industry, as anybody that owns a med spa or is listening knows. There's nothing better than either a patient testimonial or a before and after that represents your demographic, your age, your sex, that you can kind of put yourself in their shoes and see the potential outcomes of whatever treatment you're looking at. And that is really, really critical. It's visuals. It's visual in nature. It's driven by that. And so having great video and having a really interactive before and after gallery that you can sort by the different things that a patient potentially could be looking for, whether it's the problem they want to solve, the specific treatment, if the brand is big enough, like a Botox or a cool sculpting, so on and so forth. So having a really strong area for that is really key. The other is content. Is if you listen to other podcasts, even the one that I did on trends, the previous episode, I believe it was episode 177. So go back and listen to that if you haven't heard. That's kind of the top healthcare marketing trends. Is content is king, and couldn't be more so than in the med spa and aesthetic space. Why? Because it's is probably more oversaturated and it's direct to consumer. So if you're competing over trying to drive laser hair removal, non-minimally invasive weight loss like smart lipo and cool sculpting and Sculpt and all those types of things, or Imcello for female incontinence, all that stuff, there are a lot of others typically, especially if it's a larger town or city or metropolitan area. There's going to be a lot of competitors. They'll have the similar machines, or they'll have a competitor machine, and they're offering the same solution set for the same problems. So you've got a lot of competition in your area. So you have to be doing everything right. What I tell people is SEO is like a credit score. There are 3 or 4 things from a kind of hierarchy, just structuring your website right, writing content for each treatment and conditions, those things that are like the basic fundamentals. Like you must do that to even get on the first page. But when you're talking about places like this that could have 25, 30-year-old practices, older, higher domain authority, and you're a new in the space and you're trying to work your way up or enter a new market, maybe you've been in another regional territory and you're coming into a new major city, you've got to make sure that your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed, and all of the stuff that you do basic to get what I call getting over a 700 credit score. What matters even more in the med spa space is the technical execution components that get you over the 800 credit score. And when you're dealing with this level of competition, like you are in most major cities for the aesthetics cash pay space, it is absolutely critical that everything on your website is structured properly. You've got the right length of content. You've got video and mixed media on that page to keep people on the page longer. You've got proper interlinking structures. You've got supportive blog material. You've got a backlink building program in place to continue to increase domain authority. All those types of things are just really critical on your Google My Business as well. Is the offsite stuff. Is Google My Business is absolutely critical. You got to make sure you've got good UTMs on there to track. You've got call tracking on there, but you've got a good reputation program in place to continue to generate high quality reviews consistently if you want to stay competitive, because you can lose ground really, really quickly. And that leads me to kind of what people think of. So we talked about kind of your website and SEO. We're talking about lead generation. And I bring that up because those two things, if you're going to talk ads, when people think lead generation, that's what they think of. You're sending people back to your website. You may do some landing pages, but there's a lot of data to support that robust, well-built websites will typically convert better than funnel type lead landing pages in a traditional sense. Depending on obviously your situation, that can always be a little different, but that blanket statement we typically see stands true. Is really solid, robust, full websites typically will perform better than landing pages. And that's why it's really important before we start talking about lead generation that we talk about where you're sending the lead generation to before you start investing what could be a bunch of wasted money into running ads that don't convert very well, and you're scratching your head and you're frustrated why, saying that ads don't work or it's too expensive to advertise in the space that I'm in. And that just isn't the case. SEO as well is typically the cost leader from an ROI perspective if you do the things the right way and invest in a long-term approach. That if you're going after anything with a decent search volume, you should get really, really strong results from SEO and organic search and have generally the highest ROI there. Potentially social can trail behind that if you have a really, really strong social program, for sure. Organic social media, like creating video and everything. But again, it's few and far between the med spas and the aesthetics that are doing that right to actually see a high level ROI. But if you do it the right way, it can reap huge, huge benefits. But without kind of digressing into that topic separately, turning our attention toward the traditional lead generation stuff for med spas, Google Ads is definitely king. It's also, again, kind of like SEO, which it usually goes hand in hand. If organic search is highly competitive in a place, paid ads are typically going to be just as highly competitive and thusly potentially just as expensive, but not necessarily. Sometimes higher volume stuff can actually go for slightly cheaper in the auction, because what we can find is going after something really specific, that like hip resurfacing for an orthopedic for instance, or if you've got a really unique treatment that you provide as a med spa, it could actually be more expensive because it's got low search volumes but potentially high buyer intent and not a lot of competition, so you could actually spend just as much money in those spaces. But you really have to go in with a frame of reference on not only having a good top of funnel approach to generating leads for your med spa, especially if they can be more expensive, like LHR. since we've done a ton of research, since like 2020 and 2021 has gone up like 150% in terms of your cost per click, and thusly all of the other metrics, your cost per lead, your cost per acquisition. So it's getting really expensive, very, very expensive, to even be able to back into a really solid ROI for things that are not high dollar amounts. So they're not just a loss leader. And to be able to get the most out of it, you really have to look at this really more than almost any other space, as a true funnel building exercise. You've got to look at generating leads in Google Ads, but what is your game plan from a sales and a remarketing standpoint once you get that lead through the door? And that's just as important, so you don't waste money, because it can be very expensive to advertise in the med spa and plastics and aesthetic space. Is you not only have to concern yourself with getting leads through the door, but you really have to concern yourself on the close rate associated with those leads. How do we engage lost leads? How do we upsell existing leads? How do we cross sell? So maybe we do have a loss leader or something that's a lower margin procedure that could potentially drive a lot of leads through the door. But then it's our job as an exercise to make sure we're cross promoting well. A good example is Botox. Botox is a loss leader for most, but it's also the name of the game in terms of getting kind of people through the door at a med spa. But the only way that works is if you get them through the door and then you cross promote them, say at like a 50% rate to fillers, that type of stuff. But to do that, you've got to have a really good internal marketing program that is really long-term, more lucrative, and even more important to the top of the funnel is all the cross promotion. And that really comes with thinking through your kind of CRM setup and all that stuff if you're going into paid ads, which you should be thinking of. So time to go back. Google Ads is, I think, the most critical place to start when you're talking about lead generation for med spas. But you want to start narrow focused, typically, depending on your budgets, and kind of bootstrap your way up. But you also want to look at where are these leads going in terms of a CRM, and what are we doing with them once they get into the system? Do we have a clear sales process? Is our sales team trained up well on their SOPs and how they manage people inside of that CRM? And then what happens to lost leads? And then what happens to leads once they convert from a cross promotion standpoint? So we're getting the most out of them in terms of the patient lifetime value side of things. And that's really, really important to think about. There's a bunch that are out there. We've used HubSpot and Zenoti and MindBody and Aesthetic Pro and a bunch of those over the years. There's a bunch of different options. Probably HubSpot and Zenoti, or a combination of the both of those, have been two of our favorites in terms of the ability to do a lot of the stuff that I just described. But Google Ads is going to be where you want to start and where you want to focus and optimize first. And then we find social to be most productive for remarketing. You can do a really effective remarketing program through social. You can do cold stuff too. I won't get all into that because it can be a mixed bag there. And then the other big one is I highly recommend looking into, which again, I brought up in the trends one, and I'm going to be talking more about over the next couple of months, is the programmatic display side and leveraging like OTT and CTV to do video-based advertising that's very targeted and very trackable, addressable geofencing, remarketing, contextual keyword marketing, those types of things. And you can really create an omni-channel experience where you can build the brand, build the luxury feel, and target really specific people for really specific good fit type treatments that you provide based on where they go, where they live, all these types of things. But it's very, very trackable from an attribution standpoint, which is obviously really big. If you do like a TV commercial or a billboard, it can really be hard to find the attribution and the ROI on those types of investments, where with programmatic display, there's a lot that you can do from an attribution standpoint to prove out the money that you're spending in that space. Plus, it lends very well to putting fuel on the Google Ads fire. We always see in combination, or say if we've taken over an account, we've been historically running like a $10,000 a month ad campaign on Google Ads, and we introduce programmatic display, we introduce OTT CTV, that the performance paces much faster on the Google ad side. We get more leads, we get them for cheaper because there's a good cross-platform marriage here where you'll say be sitting in your living room watching on-demand television and an advertisement for a treatment that a local med spa provides. You may not pick up the phone right there, especially if it's at, say, after hours, and call and make a conversion then. But you'll probably go to Google and start searching and doing reputation analysis on them, looking at their website, looking at their before and after gallery, like we talked about. So it can they really work hand in hand extremely well. But you do want to look at getting some fantastic commercial style assets and making investment in those. They'll reap dividends. There's so many different applications that you can use them for between your website and social and YouTube, and obviously all these ads that we're talking about, remarketing ads, all that stuff. So highly recommend getting some assets like that produced and then leveraging those as an omni-channel approach using programmatic display to start targeting people in your area. And you're going to see huge results in terms of what you'll be able to produce from a lead and a customer standpoint for your med spa. And then probably last but certainly not least is the e-commerce side. E-commerce has been around for a good bit in med spas, where it's definitely been trailing more in like the insurance-based side of medicine, which again, I have talked about in some recent episodes. But if you're med spa, I highly recommend looking into productizing some or all of the components of your services and streamlining those on the website. So that way you can either take some load off of your front desk, you can still sell treatments and treatment protocols straight through the website and packages, provide offers and specials and incentives on those, do cart abandonment type stuff. And then obviously if you do have products, that's even more straightforward. But all of your treatments you can productize on the website too. You can track all of it. You can package stuff together. You can cross promote it. There's just so many applications when you add e-commerce capabilities to your website that go beyond just selling like orthomolecular or Skin Medica type. I know that's a bad example because they have their own like standalone plug and play thing with brilliant distinctions, but you get the point what I'm saying. So those I think are some of the really big lead generation tactics, because again, we do this day in and day out for med spas and cash-based practices across the country. And these are working really, really well. And then obviously, to not gloss over it, but video content marketing as the main focal point of your social media demos, getting providers involved, that stuff that brings people into the practice is really, really important as well. Because again, it's a kind of experience-based marketing, and video is the best conduit for that. And using something like our Capture MD product or the slew of products that are out there that can help you streamline creating video content quickly and getting it out in a social media engaging ready fashion are very helpful tools to lean in on that we'll talk about more in further episodes. But as always, thanks for listening to the Patient Convert podcast. Make sure you connect with me on LinkedIn. My name is Justin Knott, and go check out our website, intrepy.com, INTREPY, for all of your medical focused marketing needs. Again, that is all that we do and all we have done. So we know it like the back of our hands, and I will see you on the next episode.